Whoop on guys, Commander, and welcome to a new video on PC Building Simulator. Now, we have a test today coming up that I have been looking forward to for quite a while actually. We are testing, now since recently AMD released their biggest top consumer CPU. It's not that one. That's the Intel one. The Ryzen 9 16-core 3950X. Now, that was made to compete with Intel's Core i9 9900K, which is their top consumer CPU. And it absolutely blew them out of the park. Now, this CPU, the 3950X, was released when Intel released their 10th generation Core i9 server-side CPUs, just to prove that they can do stuff better than AMD, which they can't. And what we're going to do, well, we don't actually know that yet. That's what people keep saying. But what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be benchmarking each of them. We've got the 3950X in this one. In here, we've got the i9 9900K. And in this one, just because I was interested to see what would happen, is I've got the i9 9980XE, which is the top grade server-side CPU that Intel have got in their lineup. Now, all the PCs are exactly the same. The only thing that's changed is the CPU, of course, and the motherboard. Everything else is exactly the same. Actually, no, I tell a lie. These two have got a different storage device. It's a different M.2 drive to this one. This was just slightly faster, but in the grand scheme, it doesn't make any difference. It doesn't make any difference to the performance. So, what I'm going to do, I'm going to set this one going first, and see how they bench. Now, while that's running, we'll go into the our inventory of competing components and just see what the difference is between them. So if we go 9900K. So it's an 8-core CPU at 5 GHz max. Now these are all on overclocked. I'll declock them once we finish, just get a bit more of a realistic result, because obviously overclockedness, the 9900K will probably perform better because it is overclocked. But it's a 5 GHz frequency with 8 cores. The 3950X is 4.7 GHz. So in all fairness, only 300 MHz more. 300 MHz less than the 9900K, but it's got 16 cores. So logically, it should blast Intel out of the park. Now, whether it does or not, I'm not entirely sure. But if we go and have a look at the 9980XE, it's 18 cores of 4.4 GHz. So it's a lower clock speed, but it's got even more cores than the AMD. So which one actually will come up top, I'm not entirely sure. And it'd be interesting to see. Now, logically, the Ryzen CPU should come above the 9900K because of the spec difference. But is whether it will come up above the 9980XE. Now, if it does, then the likely chance is, looking at the score, it's not that much in it. This is definitely, it looks lower, so it may be lower, but only by slights. But if this one, I can't see that for the moment. I don't want to see that for the time being. But if that one is higher than the Ryzen 9, the 3950X, we'll put it up against the, I think we've done it before, but I'll do it again just for the sake of this video. Put up against the Ryzen Threadripper, the 2990WX, I think it is, and see how that benchmarks up against that. But first of all, so CPU score 11,342. So that's 11,000, 10,633. So actually, it's only like 1,000 difference. I don't even think it's that. Might be slightly more than that, actually. So maybe like 1,100. I don't know. Not very good at maths, you see. 1066. 10666. Yeah, so less than 1,000. So it's about like 700 points difference. So like we were saying about the graphics cards last episode, in all fairness, they run basically pretty much the same. Now, it's indifferent to now this CPU is a monster under all circumstances. Now, I don't know. Now, bear in mind, this is overclocked. So what I'm going to do, once we've my PC's, I apologize if you can hear my PC fans in the background. It's, for some reason, it's been a bit noisy, I'm not gonna lie. But anyway, so 11,315. I think that's closer to this one. I don't think. Yeah. So actually, this is more like this is coming up really close to the 3950X. So it's quite a good CPU considering. Now I know it's absolutely blown in, and for the price to performance, AMD definitely, considering how we've benchmarked, because the 9900K, this CPU is about like, I think it's like 360 quid, I think. I'm not sure what it is MSRP, but on Amazon, I think it's like 360 Great British pounds or US dollars. But whereas the 9900K is about going up like 440, 500 quid on Amazon. Again, MSRP is like 560. That is about like 400 quid MSRP. This one's definitely a lot more because it's a server-side CPU. So, you know, for performance-wise, again, that you wouldn't buy for gaming anyway. I would just put this in just to see, because I was interested to see how it would come up against it. But as far as like gaming is concerned, where you would choose between Intel and AMD, they're pretty much the same CPU. It's just the case that this one is, the 900K is just a more expensive. You get even lower of a score, and the AMD one, you get a slightly higher score, but it's much cheaper as well. So that's actually pretty interesting. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to cut ahead in the video and change the clock speeds of each of the CPUs, so the 9900K and the 3950X, to their base clock speed. So that's what they're like overclocked. I really should do it the other way around, but I always forget to downclock them before I start recording. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to downclock them to their base clock, and when I've come back, we'll bench them again and see how far away they are. Alright guys, I'm back. Now just before we carry on, I just want to say, as I was researching for the clock speeds and the difference, like what the base clocks are, I made a bit of an error I found out. The 3950X is not actually like 400 quid. It's actually more 770. Now, the i9-9900K is more in the region of like 440, as we said, 450, as I've said before. MSRP is a bit more dearer, but this CPU is the Ryzen 9 12-core 3900X. Now, it's still a lower spec than the 9900K. Sorry, higher spec than 9900K, sorry. This is the one that's around the price of the 9900K. So this is the one I really should have been comparing it at from the start. But even so, this CPU, judging by how the cost of it actually is, and the performance difference. Now we are going to check it at boost clock and see what the difference actually is, and maybe we'll see a bit of a different like result from its base clock. Now this one is actually on overclock, so I will change that back. But I'm really quite interested to see like what the difference is. Now the difference, this is a 3.5 base and this was a 3.6 base, so it shouldn't make that much difference. But even so, like, as we've seen with GPUs, that having a small clock speed difference can make quite a bit of difference as far as performance goes. So now this one, I'm not sure what that one was playing at, but it seemed quite good. Now what is this one at? So this CPU is actually still at the same speed as the 3950, the 3900X is actually at the same speed as what the 3950X was. So that's pretty good considering, and that's why this CPU is actually quite a good one. And what I was meant to be meaning on when I was talking about that. But yeah, so that's pretty good considering, and considering the price of it. Like, I'm not sure what the 9900K is going to come out as, but it's still going to be low because it's on its base. But if you wanted to overclock it, then this one is pretty good. But I don't know what the overclock speed actually is for this one. If we go into the BIOS, it should tell us. If we go CPU overclock, 4.6. So even so, that's still lower than the 9900K. Still by quite a lot. But 4.6 was about what the 3950X was, so once we underclock this, it might show up as being the same as this one. But first of all, let's go into our CPU. And in all fairness, it hasn't dropped by a significant margin. It's still, I think it must have lost like 400 points, if that, 300, 400 points. If we go to the 9900K, it has, well, the 9900K has lost a lot, but that is because it's gone to, that is because it's gone from 5 gigahertz all the way down to 3.6. Now, 5 gigahertz is ridiculous. I don't know anybody as a consumer who's bought it, who's not like a tech geek who does it for a living and overclock CPUs for a living just to see if you can do it. I don't know anybody as a consumer that buys it just to play games on or to edit or to whatever that has overclocked their 9900K to 5 gigahertz. I don't think you can do it. But that's what they claim it is, but it's not. I don't ever think you can, you know. And even if you can, you can't get it much over that. So that is taking quite a performance hit from being on its base clock. Now, the 3900X, I don't know what the base clock is, so if you just give me 2 seconds, I'm going to cut ahead in the video, and I'm just going to see what the base clock is so we can benchmark it. Alright guys, so I'm back. I've underclocked it, and it's 3.8 gigahertz, which is actually the highest of the ones we've done so far. So, considering it's cheaper, how many cores was the Ryzen 9, Ryzen 9 39? So, it's got less cores, but it's a higher clock. It's got less cores, but it's a higher base clock. So, sorry, it's got less cores, but it's got a higher base clock. So maybe that will make up for it, but I'm not entirely sure. Now, I'm interested to see where it comes in comparison to the 9900K. I don't really care about the 3950X, only because that CPU is a monster in its own right. I wouldn't necessarily pay 800 quid for it. I couldn't really recommend you pay 800 quid for it, just considering like how much you get for it and how, you know, yes, it is 18 cores, and if you are looking to build a workstation and you didn't want to fork out like $2,000 for a Threadripper because you're not building a server. You know, if you're just using it for hardcore video editing and you wanted the best of the best, then by all means, I can recommend that quite easily. But for gamers and normal consumers who are not using it for that purpose, who are looking at getting the 9900K because they want that optimal gaming performance, but don't want to pay 450 quid for it, this may work as a better solution, because a normal gamer probably isn't going to try and overclock it if they don't find it that like safe. And in all fairness, it's really not. I would overclock it only if I felt that it was necessary, and I wouldn't even do it all at once. I do it bit by bit by bit, because you can easily overheat and kill your CPU just by doing it. We might do a video on that at some point in the future, like trying to completely overclock as high as possible our CPU and see if we can break it. I don't think that's possible in the free build mode. It may be, but if not, then we'll try it in the career mode and see what happens. But that isn't a very high score, considering it's the top of the range Intel CPU. If we go to here, this is the same price and it's 2,000 points more. Now, that is quite a substantial gap, if I do say so myself. And considering the price difference, so this is about 440 and that's about 450. So for £10 cheaper, you get 2,000 points more score. Now, as I've said with the Super series of GPUs, going between the 2070 and the 2080 Super, there's not a lot of difference. It's only about 1,000 points. And I said in that video that I wouldn't go for 1,000 points difference. But 2,000 points, so quite a few people, it could make that big significant difference. So, and considering the price difference between them, the fact that they're very relatively in the same price range depending on where you get them. You know, you can, if you're in America, you probably would get on a different website than me in the UK, who'd probably get it from Amazon. But on Amazon, they're relatively the same price. Again, there's a difference, it's about 10-20 quid difference. But for the one of, I would pay an extra 20 quid, if this was 20 quid more, I'd pay 20 quid extra to get that boost in performance. So, I really, like, AMD are coming up trumps here. Now, again, like I said before, if it was the choice between the 9900K and the 3950X, I would absolutely go for the 9900K. You don't need that much processing power. And for the price that you pay for it, I can't even say that it's recommended. You know, again, like I said just a second ago, if you are a powerhouse that needs CPU strength for editing and, like, streaming and whatnot, by all means, it's perfect. There's nothing wrong with it. But it's just, if you are not doing anything that's heavily workload, you need all those cores for it. Like, if you're doing a lot of virtualization and you know, building a big server or even just a local server so you and your family can use one central PC. Now, by all means, it's a brilliant CPU for that sort of thing, but you pay for what you get. And if you're just looking to game on it, having 18 cores for 700 quid is not a good idea, because most games at the moment, as of recording this in 2019, 14th of January, games don't use more than 4 cores. And even having like an 8 or 6 core CPU is not really needed if you're just going to game on it. Again, if you're video editing, then by all means it's a perfect thing, because you can multitask, and video editing like Premiere Pro or Sony Vegas use all the cores to maximize the rendering time, and makes the rendering time even shorter for full HD, even 4K video rendering even. So if it's between these two, I would go for the Ryzen. If it's between these two, I'll go for the Intel. So it's a bit weird like how it goes, but that is just how I see it. You know, whenever I do these tech recommendations on what's better or worse for each one, I always go by on what I think. Now, I don't know it all. I don't claim that I know it all. There's a lot of things about tech that I don't know, and there's a lot of things about tech that I get wrong. Especially as far as comparing it, because in a game like PC Building Simulator, things are not 100% accurate. And I know from personal experience that Intel has always been very reliable to me. Now, everybody has their own thoughts. It's like iPhone and Android. People say iPhone's better. People say Android's better. Which one is better? I don't know, because I don't use both of them. I have my prediction. I always say that I love Android. I've always used Android. I've used Nokia a couple of times and I've liked it. It's not a bad operating system, but I prefer Android. But I've never solely used iPhone, so I can't say that necessarily Android is definitively better. I can just say that I prefer Android because that's my choice of operating system. Maybe one day I'll choose to get an iPhone and see what the difference is. But from my personal experience, I have never used an iOS system. Now, I say that I don't like Mac systems because I've used a Mac system myself and I don't like the layout. So that's how I can compare it. But with Intel and AMD, I've only used a select amount of their different processors. I've only used 1 or 2 AMD CPUs before. And because I've always had Intel. Now, that's not just for the one that I love Intel anyway. That's just because whenever I've bought something, it's always been the case that Intel has been the one that come up with what I buy. And like my PC at the moment is running an Intel chipset. But I am moving to AMD in the near future because they are better price to performance as far as what I want to do is concerned, which is recording, editing, and gaming. But you know, it depends on what you want. If you want to do it for just general gaming, then if you just want to do just gaming and you want the best component you can possibly have, go for the AMD. If you're an Intel fanboy, go for the Intel by all means. Don't go for the server-side CPU, the 9980XE for gaming, because it's not worth it. There's no point. You're paying more for what you're not going to use. But if you want to use it for video editing and whatnot, and you want to go full force on something, then by all means go for this one. Because if you are video editing, this is a very good CPU, and it will slice your rendering times and your rendering workload in half, maybe even more. But again, if you don't want to spend 700 quid, by all means go for the 3900X, but you are sacrificing a few cores because of it. And even so, the 1900K is not exactly bad for video editing. It's still a very competent CPU. These benchmarking is just based on the performance of the CPU alone. It's not saying this is a good CPU, this is a bad CPU. I'm not saying the 1900K is not a good CPU, because it's an absolutely monstrous CPU. But in comparison with which one is better, I have to go give it to AMD on this one because of their price to performance. You know, and if you look at videos on Linus Tech Tips, which is where I get a lot of my inspiration to do these videos on PC Building Simulator from, is those types of channels like Linus Tech Tips, Bitwit, J2 Sense, etc. They all say that Intel has always been their go-to, but since AMD's released their latest Ryzen chips, especially considering Ryzen's building their new 4th gen CPUs to go in desktops, I think we're going to see Ryzen make a comeback, because AMD's always been the underdog, and it's still the underdog in GPUs, as I've mentioned before. But they're making a comeback in CPUs, and if they can do it properly, I think they're going to have a really good step on the market. Maybe just because it's mainly just their price to performance. Now, there are going to be some people who are going to be like, oh, I love Intel, I'll always go for Intel, AMD's crap. It's not if you think about it in detail. So anyway, that is about what we have time for in this Let's Play video here. I'd like to thank you all for watching. If you did enjoy, don't forget to smash that like button and hit that subscribe button for more awesome gaming content. And I shall see you all later. Bye!